Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. Do we have any... Oh, this meeting is being live streamed. Should the live stream go down, we will pause the meeting until the live stream has been resumed. Thank you. Do we have any apologies and substitutions? Looks like we have a full house.
Yeah, I haven't received any apologies from Councillor Alison Whelan so far.
Sorry. I thought she'd written, but she has apologies.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Right,
apologies from
you.
Councillor Whelan. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. And are you happy for me to sign the minutes of the Licensing Committee and the following licensing statutory subcommittee meetings, only one of which I attended, on the 24th of November, the 7th of December and the 13th of December? Were those present happy for me to sign those as a true record? Okay, I will do that after the meeting. I have no chairman's announcements, so now we will move to agenda item number 5 for the Department of Transport Best Guidance Practice Update. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So in 2023, the Department for Transport finally published updated best practice guidance for local authorities to obviously have regard to. Last time this had happened, I think, was in 2010. Prior to that, it was 2006 when the first ever DFT best practice guidance was introduced. So what this essentially does is it forms another level. You've got sort of policies, and then you have best practice, and then you have statutory guidance, and obviously then regulations and legislation itself direct. So it just forms part of that sort of tiered system of things that we have to have regard to. The good news is that the council's sort of policy that we updated only the tail end of 2023 includes most of what the Department for Transport best practice is asking of us to have regard to. So essentially, as I say, we take our role very seriously and we place public safety at the forefront of all our decisions made by officers and members alike. And we obviously have our policy, as I say, it was updated in 2023 following a consultation. We received no comments from any of our trade on that, and that obviously was adopted by the Licensing Committee and came into effect in, I think it was November 2023. So some of the things which are already sort of covered in that document, which we already, as I say, have adopted, is having a points-based enforcement system, which we've actually had since 2018, and it's proved to be, you know, a valuable tool in dealing with low-level, sort of, you know, I hate to use the word sort of not serious, but you know, they are the less serious, you know, contraventions of policy that runs very similarly to the DVLA's point system, but it is an in-house system. It doesn't get recorded out externally in that way. Mentions also about regularly reviewing the fees that we charge. Well, again, you know, we have been doing that every year since 2018 without failure, and we keep abreast of that. And obviously, as members are aware, they have to sit through quite a lengthy report from myself to talk about all the different fees that we do. So that's already incorporated. It talks about safeguarding and disability awareness training. And again, we do that, and we have done since 2018. We actually were doing the disability element of that prior to that via a video that the trade were watching and then doing a manual knowledge test. Whereas this time round, we now have a computerized knowledge test, but we still have the video element to it in that way. So we have that as well. Talks about applying policy changes retrospectively to existing licenses as well as new licenses. Well, you know, a good example of that we already do is obviously the new policy in November introduced a emissions policy, and that is going to obviously affect all new applications coming in, but as we all know, it is also going to affect the existing licenses which are out there, albeit in a proportionate way, i.e. giving them a grandfather right period in order to migrate to the new standard of vehicles. So again, it's something showing that we already sort of demonstrate we're doing that. Talks about not having a quantity restriction on Hackney carriages. This is where some areas of the country, they actually do limit the number of Hackney carriages which are in their fleet, and then they have to do sort of a needs analysis every now and then to see whether they should be increasing that cap. And they sort of talk about that they're not really overly helpful. And what we have chosen here to do is to allow the market forces to essentially determine the number of Hackney carriages that are out there. So it's like self-regulation by demand, really, you know, rather than us fixing it and then having to review it. That obviously, if you have a fixed cap as well, what it tends to do is create a black market in plate values. Because people can't get new ones, so they end up go up in value. So they have to pay, you know, you have to pay somebody else for their license when they retire, etc. Monitoring fare rates to ensure they remain appropriate. Well, we do that, and obviously we've had since 2018 we've had a number of updates in our tariff rates that the Hackney carriages are able to charge, and it's done as a sort of fair and proportionate sort of way. And again, that's quite a detailed report, which I know a number of members here today have been privy to, obviously being on some of those committees in the last 5 years. Providing information on flexible transport services. Again, we do provide that information to people if inquiries are made. So we're quite open and transparent in that way in dealing with people. Not having mandatory age limits on vehicles. Whilst the new Euro 6 policy at the moment kind of does create a mandatory age limit because they've got to obviously be more than 2015, we've not sort of stated like some other authorities where you will not have a vehicle that is, you know, more than 6 years of age on first application. And obviously as we go into the future, vehicles will be able to be 10, 11, 12 years of age as long as they obviously meet Euro 6. So, you know, at the moment we've inadvertently kind of created an age limit, but it's not a specific age limit within the policy. And so we're following the best practice guidance in that regard as well. Having regard to the regulators code when setting standards, we do that, and every policy decision we bring forward to members has sort of been looked at on that. It talks about proportionality, etc. We have regard to that. And we also have regard to the public sector equality duty. So we do sort of equality assessments in the background to ensure that things are not going to disadvantage certain sectors of the populace. So we're already doing that. So really, you know, from reading the full best practice guidance, the one thing that it's very clear is that it wants to put accessibility at the forefront of our minds. Section 4 looks at accessibility issues and mentions the difficulties that can be experienced by disabled people trying to find suitable vehicles in their area, suitable means of communication when attempting to book a journey, and their experience when taking a journey in a licensed vehicle. Paragraph 4.4 says that the best practice guidance suggests all licensing authorities should develop and maintain an inclusive service plan, either as a standalone document or as an integral element of a wider strategy to facilitate service accessibility. Now, the Council does have and maintains an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, but it isn't specifically covering accessibility issues around taxi and private hire vehicle use. When you read it, it's more about how we recruit people and how we deal with the people we interact with. So I do feel that at the moment, whilst we have, you know, well-respected service, high standards of entry, high standards in order to remain licensed, the current policy adopted, you know, is well placed to deal with many things, but it is lacking on this, you know, this area that the best practice guidance has picked up on, which is an inclusive service plan. So essentially, To demonstrate the council's commitment to improving accessibility, officers would recommend commencing work on producing a specific taxi and private hire inclusive service plan, which can be brought back to a future committee for further consideration, obviously regards content, etc., which can then go to a consultation. And so it's a bit of a drawn out process, but I think that it's an important piece. And also there are elements within our policy, and there are elements within other parts of the council policies that already do some of that. And I think what we need to do is be mindful of pulling all of that sort of information in. And it would probably, you know, sit within the existing taxi licensing policy, but it's its own section, and it will just draw all of that together. So it's a very much a clear, transparent way for everybody to see, you know, the information at a glance. So that's the recommendation, which is in 2.1, that it's recommended that we agree to commence work on producing a specific taxi and private hire inclusive service plan to be brought back to a future committee for further consideration and input from members.
Thank you, Stuart. Does anybody have any questions for Stuart? Christine Ambrose-Smith.
Looking at the last bullet point on section 4.2, having regard to the public sector equality duty, is that viewed from a national perspective or very much a local perspective? Because I can see around here there will be some sections of the community nationally that aren't particularly represented in this thing. I mean, is it gender, ethnicity, religious affiliation? Where does it stop? It just seems a little bit of a...
Yeah, so the equality duty will pick up on all the protected characteristics, obviously some of the ones you've mentioned. It would be our local plan, because it's obviously we're East Cambridgeshire District Council. So it would be things which are relevant within our district boundary. It would look at all of the aspects of the various protected characteristics, and that is something, as I say, that we already do via equality impact assessments, which we do in the background for our policy decisions, and we sort of have regard to that. What we could be doing, and again, part of this piece of work would be maybe to bring that to the forefront a little bit more, you know, to sort of show people how, you know, how we're basing that, you know, how we're taking that into account. There are always going to be inherent difficulties with a situation where we don't, you know, we don't run the taxi service, and this is obviously to do with taxes. It's not to do with Licensing Act or Gambling Act or any of the other things that we do, which also have you know, the public sector equality duty requirement for us to consider. This is purely about obviously relating to taxes, and we don't employ the taxi drivers. We don't, you know, deal and pay for the vehicles, etc. So they are very much their own businesses, and we can do various things at a policy level. But there are always going to be inherent sort of difficulties in putting this, because, you know, we may say as a council that we want to see more of this type of vehicle. I can't then make those people out there go and purchase those vehicles, you know, and you know what will happen or what could potentially happen is if you make one area very difficult, then you will see nobody buy new vehicles in that area, and they will all move to a different part of the business market, i.e. private hire, where they may not have such restrictions. And that has certainly happened in other areas of the country, where people have moved away from hackney carriages, you know, and just moved into private hire work. So it has to be balanced. It has to be, you know, well thought out, and for that reason, I think, you know, whereas normally I would have drafted everything and just presented it to you guys to then go out to consultation, I think that, you know, there needs to be a bit more thought on this particular piece of work, and then obviously come before we go out to all of the organisations who operate in this area, you know, the various you know, disability groups, etc. So hopefully that's answered the question.
Councillor Trapp, Councillor Goodell, and then Councillor Horgan, and then Councillor Kane. So
Thank you very much.
I've got you all written down.
Stuart, would you envisage a different policy for taxi and private hires, or would they be more or less the same?
I think My gut feeling is there would be a different because taxis and private hire vehicles have always been seen as two separate types of vehicles fulfilling two separate needs almost, you know, the immediate hire, the pre-booked sort of hire in that way. That's my gut feeling on it. And I think because, as I say, we're going to start formulating this piece of work, though some of that answer may present itself. And then obviously members will have the sway on how the document is formed. So my gut feeling is there would be a different sort of approach to the different regimes.
Next question, would you expect this to be for all taxi hire? I mean, would the policy be all taxis would be accessible or not? Because I can see private hire would be different because you can pre-book it.
I don't foresee the entire fleet of vehicles becoming wheelchair accessible, for instance. I just do not see that happening. This is just about, you know, forming a joined up policy that may look at sort of directing people to community transport initiatives, working closer with those sort of organisations. They sit outside of the licensing regime, so they won't ever be something that we can control. But it's as I say, it's an inclusive sort of service plan. It's kind of just saying, right, we've got perhaps all these different elements that are within, like we already do the safeguarding and disability awareness and customer service awareness training and all that sort of stuff. Our policy, 126 pages of it, there's a lot in there about codes of conduct, behaviour, expectations, etc., etc. I think what this piece of guidance is sort of saying is that, you know, to bring all that together, and what it also says is that this will generally be something that's almost bread and butter for unitary authorities and people who are more involved in the joined up transportation initiatives of trains, you know, planes and buses, etc. And then it talks about saying that, you know, that doesn't exclude district councils from considering its own obligations at a local level. So, you know, I don't see this being a right as soon as this is created and goes out to consultation, but it will be a requirement for everything to be wheelchair accessible. A diverse fleet of different types of vehicles fulfilling a need is where we want to be. What we don't want to see is you know, sort of like a one-stop sort of shop for everything.
Well done. Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a clearing up on that last bullet point again. The way, I may have read it wrong, but the way I see it is it's our policy to ensure that the taxi drivers and firms do not discriminate against someone saying you're not getting one of my taxis because I don't agree with your religion or whatever. That's what that policy is about. It's not for us. For us, it would be that we can't refuse from someone to start up a taxi company because we don't like the way they look and et cetera, et cetera. But that last bullet point was mainly about taxi drivers refusing members of the public be discriminatory.
No. Maybe myself not sort of explaining it. So you're absolutely right. Our taxi drivers do have those responsibilities under the Equalities Act and under our policy to ensure that they don't discriminate, i.e., you know, they don't turn somebody away who's got an assistance dog. You know, they don't turn somebody away who, you know, has a fold-up wheelchair and needs that additional assistance to put the wheelchair into the boot of a car. So they do have those, and you are absolutely right on that. But the public sector equality duty is a duty upon this authority to ensure the policies that we create and generate don't have a discriminatory impact on those who want to be running a business and that side of things. You know, so that could be, you know, but how do I delicately word this? But it could be if somebody came to us who was from a Pakistani background, that I don't turn around to them and say, no, I'm afraid you can't because you're Pakistani and you're not white British. And that's a really crude way of putting it, you know, but obviously then that would be something where our policy, if I did that, would be firmly against that equality duty, because clearly I'm being racist in doing that. So that's where the difference is. Yes, the trade have that obligation. We administer that, we enforce that. and we will take action when they don't do it, as well as members of the public being able to take their own civil action against them as well. But this is very much about how we go about doing our day-to-day business of ensuring that our policies are fair and equal to all who wish to operate under them.
Councillor Horgan.
Thank you, Chair. Oops, apologies. Just wanted to check my understanding of the target of the inclusive service plan. I can understand that it's aimed at the driver-passenger relationship. Does it, or would it also be involved in looking at the rules, policies, etc., of the driver-employer relationship as well?
No, again, the extent of this will be the council's approach to people who want to obtain licenses and use a service. It won't be between the driver and their employer. Their employer will have their own responsibilities under the equalities legislation to ensure that they're doing everything they should do. This is more like, again, when this sort of came about, you know, I had a look at our policy, and it could be something as simple as none of our operators or vehicles have to have like Braille, for instance, right? You know, so all of our plates are lovely and shiny and plastic and recyclable, and they sit on the back of the vehicle, and the ones inside are cardboard and fold up, and again, they present everything to somebody who is you know, sighted. You know, they do absolutely nothing to somebody who isn't. You know, and so it could be something that this piece of work comes back and says, well, actually, a very simple thing that could make it far easier for people to obtain transportation in our district would be that there would be a Braille equivalent, you know, that all vehicles have to have available in the vehicle. So should somebody ask, they can see, you know, they can be presented that, you know, so they know that that vehicle is licensed and the driver's licensed, because again, you know, all of our drivers have these, but this is no use to somebody with no sight. No. You know, and obviously it talks about when people go to book a vehicle, you know, again, we changed our policy in 2023 from just requiring our operators to just have a landline at the booking centre to having the ability to have a landline, but also obviously the modern way of like apps and a computerized system and that sort of thing. So, you know, it could be, you know, it could be simply, you know, things that, you know, make that process that bit easier. You know, if somebody's maintaining an office where members of the public go to book maybe a hearing loop, you know, is a requirement of an operator license. So when they go in, they can communicate effectively. And these are perhaps simple things that can be incorporated. And they're just things, like I say, that I thought off the top of my head, that until it presents itself and you actually sort of think, well, our policy is fine, you know, but then, you know, I'm sighted, I can hear and I can, you know, walk and talk. And that's what this piece of work will look at.
Councillor Kane.
Thank you. That leads quite nicely into my question, actually. I was wondering if there are additional costs as a result of this, like a hearing loop, does this council have the power to provide grants to facilitate that?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm not aware of what grants can be available for that at a local level. We could certainly, as part of this work, look to see if there are external sources of grants and financial assistance, you know, available. Obviously, we have the power because it's a discretionary fee, so we can incorporate certain things into the fee structure moving forwards. You know, if it's only a small level of additional cost, then, you know, like for instance, the Braille kind of, if we went down that route of having like a Braille equivalent of an internal plate, you know, we're probably talking that the additional cost per vehicle is, off the top of my head, maybe about 60 or 70p. You know, so that wouldn't be obviously too problematic. But I think again, without wishing to dismiss it, but I think that's something that the work we do will be able to present that back to members and say that the cost potentially, if we go down this route, will be X, and this type of funding could be made available, or it could be funded in this way. So that, I think the answer will probably present itself further down the line.
Thank you. Can I ask a further question? So you're going to go consult as part of putting this together. So presumably you'll consult with the trade, you'll presumably consult with our access group. Will you also consult with other groups that either represent or have a significant number of people with disabilities in them?
The answer to that is yes. I haven't yet formulated the exact way, whether we have like a working group, a bit like we have working groups for other types of work the council does, where small representative group is put together and we discuss and think, discuss the policy and what people want from it. We then formulate a document which then goes out to a wider consultation. Whether it goes that way, that would probably be my preferred route. Because a small group is quite easy to work with and they can be reflective. And then it goes out. Clearly, it will have to go out to the entire trade. It will also go out to, let's say, all of the local equality groups that we're aware of. And then that will come back. But before we even get to that point and actually sending it out to a wider consultation, as I said on the recommendation, would be to bring that working document back to members here, so you can have this sort of final say on whether you think it's good enough to go out to consultation, essentially, and then we'll involve a lot more people. Those comments will come back to a further committee where hopefully the decision will be made, and that will then be incorporated into the existing policy that we have.
Any further questions?
Well, just to flag, I'm particularly thinking in my area, we've got quite a lot of organisations that work with people with educational needs, and I just wanted to make sure that those needs got factored into this as well. Yeah,
absolutely, Councillor. So again, as we sort of go through the process, normally what you'll see on my reports when we go to consultation is there will be a list of people I intend to consult with, and at that meeting, if you feel that I've missed people off that list, then please raise that, and then obviously we'll ensure that they get incorporated into that consultation exercise.
Any further questions? I just wanted to say that I think it's a brilliant idea. And I love the idea that you're going to go away and put together the skeleton and then bring it back to us so we can have a look at it and see if we want to add any bits on, take any bits out before it then goes out to consultation. So it will be a collaborative with the working group and ourselves to make sure that this is the best policy it can possibly be for everybody in our district. And I think it's a credit to our licensing team that we are doing 99.9% of everything that the Department of Trade or Transport want us to do already, which I think is really encouraging, and just pass on my thanks. And I look forward to seeing this document coming forward and we can work on it and just make sure that everybody in our district can get a taxi and be helped when they need to be helped. But I love the idea of the Braille thing. And actually, I think a lot of black cabs in London, I think, have a hearing loop as standard. But I can't ever remember seeing one in Cambridge that has had a hearing loop. I could be entirely wrong, but I'm sure there must be some. Right, are we all ready to move to the vote, or do we want to discuss this further? Happy to move to the vote? Oh, Councillor.
So I've got a late question, just in terms of so we now understand the process and the purpose. What is the rough timescale to actually complete this, do you think? I'm not trying to pin you down for. I'm trying to get a feel for the timeline, not precise dates.
That's always a dreaded question, though, isn't it? So, we have got, obviously we have a full sort of diary of work all the time. But my intention is that this will be sort of done over the next 6 to say I would like to certainly have it out to consultation by, say, the autumn. You know, we have a fairly busy autumn committee schedule, as you know, because it's when fees review and other things like that happen at that time. We've also kind of just preempting the officer update, but we also have a gambling policy consultation that's got to go out. It's been 3 years since that was done, so that's got to go out towards the tail end of this year as well. So as long as the programme allows it, I would like to think that this would certainly be out to consultation within 6 months, you know, and then obviously then it will go out for maybe eight weeks consultation on it, and it might well be, you know, sort of, you know, just before Christmas we get things concluded, but that would be my hopes at this point.
Anything else? Any last minute curveballs for Stuart before we? So are we all happy to move to the vote? I'm quite happy to say yes, let's go forward with this policy. Do I have a show of hands? It's terrific. Thank you very much indeed. To your update, Stuart, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of short and sweet, really, I think. As I just alluded to there, and we do have the gambling policy that we have to update. There was a gambling white paper that came out, and that will need to be looked at and incorporated into this update. I think the work on it will be starting in the summer. So probably about May, and then it goes out to consultation, and then comes back, it comes to committee, and then it's formally adopted by council in time to be enforced for January. So that will happen this year as a piece of work. The licensing authority at the moment, we continue to see record numbers of applications, actually. I was looking yesterday, and we've had 150 applications. That's excluding inquiries and other, you know, other sort of things that, you know, and routine reminders for this, reminders for that, etc. But actual fresh applications in all areas combined is 150 in what is it, approximately 6 weeks. You know, that is higher than it's ever been. You know, and obviously we're incredibly busy as a result of that, which is great. But as I say, you know, it's quite busy, and we've got somebody off sick at the moment as well, so that's not overly helpful. I had hoped to bring you the conclusion of our animal welfare prosecution. Sentencing was last Friday, but it was adjourned, unfortunately. So we still wait on the outcome of that decision. We still have we have an appeal lodged against the decision, which was actually in those subcommittee minutes, which is against the Londis Fordham review of the licence, which was revoked. And the licence holder has appealed that decision, so we are dealing with that. We still have yet to conclude the appeal against the driver refusal that we refused last year. That is due to be determined in March. So no other sort of major issues to report, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. Sounds like you're keeping busy. Right, we now move on to the forward agenda. My forward agenda only goes up to March, and I see no business on that one currently. So do we assume that one is cancelled unless something urgent crops up?
It was my intention to ask, Chair, if you would cancel that meeting so that I can get on with the other work. And then, as you say, April is not shown on here, but it is my intention to bring our enforcement policy. The council has been doing an enforcement audit, and one of the things that raised was that our enforcement policy is very much out of date. We have a lot of enforcement stipulations within our individual policies, but there is also a separate overriding enforcement policy, and that is my intention to bring that to committee in April, which will then again will need to go to a small consultation before being approved further committee in the summer. So that's just for April.
Thank you very much, Stuart. In which case then I look forward to seeing everybody in April. And at 10:34, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for all coming. Oh, those staying on for the subcommittee, don't go. John and Gareth and